Welcome to Turek Books Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Joshua Turek. We're never going to read all the books we want, but when someone tells us about a book, that's its own valid form of experiencing it. Our guests come in to talk about the books that left lasting marks on them as readers, and that becomes a springboard to who they are, who I am, and maybe who all of us are. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it. And who knows, maybe you'll end up grabbing a book or two. Maybe you've read some of them and it's nice to hear someone else talk about them. We want this to be like a book club, but without the guilt. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Turek Books. I'm so excited for our guest today. He's a writer, a director, an actor, a father, a husband, and a friend. He joins me remotely from New York City. David Hull, how you doing?
I'm very good, buddy. Thanks for asking. Doing well, I guess I should say, since you started with writer. You led with writer in my list of multi-hyphenates.
Yeah. Please uphold the grammar rules. How are things? How's your reading life these days?
You know what? It's actually fucking on a rocket ship, but it's all weird. I used to be like, I think you and I have talked about this. I read kind of religiously only dense nonfiction. I kind of felt like I'm giving my time and energy to this. I better learn something. And that was kind of the only way I thought of learning something as being valuable. And since then, I just really hit a wall and I was not really reading at all. And I was stuck in I was very stubborn. I refused to put books down, even when I was only a third of the way through them and it had been a month or whatever. So I changed my ways, and that was largely thanks to you, I have to say.
Really? What did I do?
And now I read anything and everything. We had this exact conversation. I'm glad it was as meaningful to you as it was to me.
Don't blame me for your good habits.
No. I started doing deeper dives on specific authors, which was, I think, fun. It still felt like I was gathering a sort of wealth of information. I was reading from authors during specific chapters in history, which was giving me a lot of context for sort of like what the social commentary was of the time, which is, equally informing as reading a dense sort of historical text about the same subject. So then once I started doing that, I started getting a taste for specific authors and started, I'm a library boy, so I would just add things to the list, and whatever comes up, I would blaze through, which is why you're going to have to refresh me the premise. I'm supposed to bring a stack of books, right?
Yeah, exactly. A stack of books.
I have a stack of books, but really, most of the books I've been reading are library books, so I have no said stack.
But that's okay. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to have them physically. It's always fun to see them, but honestly, most of the people just listen to this podcast anyway. My YouTube.
No, I don't need to. Well, I think what I meant is, I have, my memory is a sieve, and I have no recollection. I remember that I liked the books I was reading, and that's about the extent of it. I actually logged into the app to see what my history was, so I could do a quick recap, and they make you opt into that. And I hadn't opted in, so there's no historical record of any book I've taken out.
And you have 2 young kids. You're a busy man.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be thousands of books. But I do have a ridiculously large stack, actually.
I'm going to vouch for your library because when I was there in June in New York, I visited you and we went with your sons to go return some library books.
We did, that's right, yeah.
And they zip around those sidewalks on their scooters, and
they sure do, baby.
Yeah.
They're city kids.
Yeah, city kids. It was really cool to go on that little
It's sweet,
book
though.
excursion.
It's romantic. It's like, let's walk to the drop box and drop our books back off, and then if we have time, we can sneak in and grab a couple replacements. It's really sweet.
Yeah, it's awesome. My memory is starting to fire up. I remember during the pandemic when you and I would hang out at that cemetery in Glendale together.
This is it, buddy.
We talked some books, and I think Paul Beatty.
Glad it's coming back to you.
Yes.
Yes, Paul Beatty was a big one. I read 6 of, I think I have them over there.
All of them, huh? There's 4 or 5 novels that he wrote.
I think I read 3. I read Sellout. I read, what's the one?
Slumberland?
Slumberland, yes, loved that one.
Yeah.
No, White Kid Shuffle,
Yeah, White
is that
Boy
one?
Shuffle.
White Boy Shuffle.
Yeah, and there's
I
really
read those three for sure.
actually there's only one more, and it's his New York book, which is called Tough.
I haven't
I
read
feel
that
like
one.
you
There's
should.
another one. This must be a different author then, because I remember sitting in Greenwood Cemetery texting you about something else. And that was like one of a... Oh, was it Percival Everett? No, I don't
Yeah.
think it was.
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense.
I thought it was Paul Beatty, but it must not have been.
Percival
I was
Everett
reading
wrote that book James, which is like the spin on Huckleberry Finn told from James.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called Erasure, which was adapted into a screenplay called, oh shit, American Fiction. Did you see this? It was,
Oh my God, yeah. I love that
last
movie.
year. Me too. This is what sent me on the Percival Everett dive. And I read actually one of the books in my stack is God's Country, which is one of his, which is like a Western fable kind of. It's like it feels a little mythical, but it's a classic Western. And the protagonist is just sort of like a cartoonishly dumb and racist white guy. And the people he encounters are natives, or in one case, this like very smart and capable black man who just because of the time is kept at a certain station, but is this man's like saving grace. And turns those sort of like Western Odyssey on its head. But it's like funny, it's not, it is challenging, but it's fun to read. He like paints really clear pictures. He's very, I'm like, I have a really visual, I have a really visual experience when I'm reading his stuff. But I loved that one. The Trees, that's one that he wrote that I've been meaning to read.
Okay, so
This
yeah.
must not have been who we were talking about. Now I don't know who it was. It's going to drive me crazy.
No, I'm glad you brought him up, though. God's Country sounds amazing. All these parts of history, of course, that get left out, one of which that we're starting to see some pieces about, which is like the black cowboy and black people in the West, and how for so long they've kind of been neglected from that history. So that sounds amazing. But Percival Everett, he lives in the same territory as Paul Beatty, in the fact that they're saying really impactful social things about race, but they're really funny.
Yes, funny. And like Paul's feels a little more abstract. I feel like from what I've read of Percival's stuff, he's kind of skewering a specific trope or a specific genre, and he'll sort of largely write in that genre with like some ethereal swings or some bigger stylistic swings. I haven't read enough of his stuff to really testify to that as a whole, but Paul Beatty's stuff gets like really weedy and really out there, and you like kind of forget what you were reading for a second. It feels a little acid trippy, actually. It's kind of like
it does. I just made my 10 favorite novels list and put it on Turek Books Instagram, and I was kind of embarrassed because it's a little broy. My non-fiction
10 favorite
ever.
Shit.
It's inspired by the fact that I just read Grapes of Wrath for the first time this week.
Oh my God, it's in my stack. We've talked about John Steinbeck 100 times because he hits like a fucking sledgehammer, right? Especially right now. And I feel like such a basic bitch for putting Grapes of Wrath in my stack, but it's in there.
Good. No, don't. I want to talk about it because it was one of those books that just missed my English class for whatever. He's holding it up for whatever reason. But the fact that they even let the kids read that book, and probably before they understood really how directly it connects to waking up, being born into a world kidnapped by capitalism in a settler colonial
country. Well, I actually think sort of to the contrary, that the public discourse around capitalism and the working class was in line with with the way that he is skewering it in the book. I mean, he's like very obviously skewering it. And it feels like somehow that narrative has gotten away from the working class. I'm not somehow, obviously, that narrative has gotten away from the working class people. And this like ruthless defense of the capitalist elite class from the working class. Whereas during this era and just after this era, when our parents were in grade school reading books, like this would have been I think, a sort of lifeblood conversation, a sort of very middle of the road, very assumed stance on what happens when evil, wealthy people siphon everything from the people that have made them wealthy in the first place. And it feels to me like I read it now and it feels like this radical work of literature because it's, and I honestly think my dad couldn't read it now and accept it and like soak it up. It would feel like, these woke libs, even though he's talking about a novel from 100 years ago. It is kind of endlessly infuriating. And I feel like that's why when I read it, it's also fun to read. Like I thought of Steinbeck. East of Eden, I love. That's a novel we've talked about a bunch. That's like playing with other themes, and it's definitely like dancing on a sort of biblical line that is really fun. I was raised Southern Baptist. It's really fun for me to watch any sort of like, I was going to say skewering again. He's not doing that exactly. It's almost like appreciating, but with some distance and with his own perspective taking it over. But that one's a little harder. I feel like there's a bigger barrier to entry on that one. It does feel like you have to work a little bit. Grapes of Wrath didn't feel like, I read Grapes of Wrath after East of Eden, and it's not that at all. I sort of read it because I felt like it was a chore that I'm sure I had to read this in high school, and I'm sure I cheated my way through the test, and I'm sure I like copied somebody's book report and got an A and survived the public school system without ever having to crack the book even a single time. And so I was like, I should read. And I'm doing this with Dostoevsky. I like read Notes from Underground because of your podcast, which also hits like a sledgehammer and was a blast to read. I think I read it in like 2 days. It's more like novella length. But then I started going through, what did I read of his next? Brothers Karamazov, and then what are the big ones? What are the heavy ones that you must?
A Crime and Punishment.
Crime and Punishment.
I think you wrote The Idiot.
The Idiot.
I haven't read The Idiot.
I'm 2/3 of the way through it and have been for about 9 months.
When did you read Grapes of Wrath? Was that in the last couple of years?
No, it was since we moved here. I read East of Eden probably in that COVID world.
Yeah, so the last 4 or 5 years.
And then Grapes of Wrath I read just after it.
I guess that's what I mean is when we were young, when we were in high school, we're the same age, early 2000s. That's like things had started to turn. The lifestyles of the rich and famous were on TV all the time. It was very much about kids at my school were driving brand new Hummer H2s with 23-inch spinning rims. You know, it was very much about basking in wealth and individuality. And maybe that's why Grapes of Wrath never went across my curriculum. But to your point,
I can't imagine it was like intentionally excluded. It probably just felt a little unimportant and museumy at that point, which is, but now I'm sure it's, I mean, I don't know if anybody's reading it closely enough to see it for what it is in the places that are banning books.
I think that's the genius of it, though, because he humanizes the struggle, and it's so poetic. Like you said, you thought it was going to be a chore. That's what kept me away from it. I always knew Dust Bowl. Oh shit!
Yeah,
here we
exactly.
go. Suffering porn. But it wasn't.
I was coming off of another book that I had bailed on, which was about the Dust Bowl. It's up there somewhere. The Worst Hard Time. Someone had recommended it to me, and it was just about the Dust Bowl. And I find the era really fascinating. I find everything that's happening really fascinating. But the way that I'm sure I'm not shitting on the Worst Hard Time. I haven't read it enough to actually have an opinion on it, but I bailed on it a little bit because it just wasn't keeping my attention. And I was like sort of in this period trying to change my relationship to books and stop just reading things because I felt like I need to be reading something and I need it to be meaningful and important and impactful. And I need it to be Thomas Piketty's Capital or whatever. I need to like have something I actually enjoy reading. And if I'm not enjoying reading it, I would rather like blow through a book count in a year. I'd rather read 15 or 20 books in a year than suffer through 3, even if those 3 were really meaningful, because what I have discovered is that I'm finding as much meaning in the things that I think at the outset felt unmeaningful. But anyway, I was just coming off of the exact thing you're describing, being like, okay, Dust Bowl, hard times, we're going to suffer through it together. but it's so beautiful and it's so personal. And I think this is my issue with, I keep invoking my dad's name, but with this sort of generational thing that's happening, which is like once you get to the other side of that struggle and you're like solidly middle class, then it feels like the 1%-y thing is you're closer to that than you are to the working class thing, which is very obviously not true. And so watching people bend over backwards and do these gymnastics to defend these things that when you have a first person account of it, even if it's fictional, it's unmistakable who the villains are. You know, it's unmistakable.
Yeah, and I mean that's to your point, the effectiveness in which John Steinbeck skewers capitalism and wealth inequality and excessive greed. It's so much more effective than most of the dense nonfiction books you'll ever read. And it actually is like, okay, I'm going to read all fiction next year. But here's my thing with nonfiction. I'm still going to chip away at it, but just 2 pages a day of whatever nonfiction book. And then somehow that 2 pages turns to 3 or 4 or 5. But if it doesn't, that's fine. 2 pages. I can get through 2 pages.
I had a similar philosophy in my writing pursuits, where I was like, when I'm feeling really bogged down and I don't feel particularly inspired and I don't really feel like opening it, if I do 5 to 10 minutes a day, it's only 5 minutes. I can sit and like tinker with it for 5 minutes, and if that's it, I put it away, fine. And then the next day, I'll tinker with it for 5 more minutes because it was only yesterday I was looking at this. Versus like waiting for the moment to feel inspired, and then all of a sudden it's been months since I've touched this thing. Then the hill feels even harder to climb, and then you like almost never get back to it. And like you're saying, the 5 minutes often turns into a half an hour or 45 minutes or hours if you like really start getting in the groove.
Yes.
I do have a good nonfiction in my stack if you care to hear it.
Let's hear it.
I'm sure you've read it and maybe you've even talked about it. Book of Eels.
No, I've never even heard of it.
It's about fucking eels, Josh, and I'll tell you what. I didn't think I cared much about eels at all, but I was fully crying. The author, Patrick Sphenson, sounds very Nordic, intercuts a sort of like very classic nonfiction approach to just discussing eels with stories of him and his father fishing for eels when he was a boy, and like what he learned about them from that vantage point and the kind of curiosity that it drove. Eels are fucking insane. They're crazy. Do you know anything about eels?
No. What are they?
We've spent 200 years trying to figure out how they mate and procreate, and we have no idea.
Wow.
We still have no idea. We've never seen it. They can't do it in the wild. Actually, they've kind of had a little bit of success with Japanese eels. They mate. All of the eels in all of Europe and all of America, like all of the rivers and lakes in both of those continents, all spawn in the same little corner of the Bermuda Triangle.
Whoa.
And then they leave, and the American eels and the European eels are genetically distinct from one another, but they all spawn in the same area, so they like know to only procreate with their same. And then as they ride the currents to get out of that deep sea and work their way towards the freshwater on the mainland, they somehow know to split, and the American eels split off and go towards the States, and the European eels, genetically distinct from the American eels, but not distinct in any way that we could see with our eyes, know to stay on that and wait until they get to the European side. They'll go it takes like months for them to work their ways into wherever they end up, because of no reason that we can figure out, to live for their entire lives. They can live for 100 years. We've recorded them living 100 years.
Whoa.
That's in captivity, but the reason they can live for 100 or more years in captivity is because they won't die until they get back to that ocean to spawn, and then that's their dying act. They get back to that Bermuda Triangle. It's called the Sargasso Sea. It's a massive piece of the ocean, but somewhere in there's a very specific place that they all go to that we don't know. We've never seen it. We've seen them like hours old. they've had vessels. They've spent millions of dollars because there's like been a historic fascination with eels. They were kind of like associated with evil in the sort of medieval times, and it became a big source of food in Europe and in Asia. Then they became their population started decreasing rapidly, and so there were these efforts to stop the fishing and hunting of them, so that they could reestablish themselves in the wild, which didn't work. So they've been trying to feverishly figure out how to do it so that they could either farm them like they do with salmon or other like otherwise wild caught fish, or just figure out why they're not procreating like they used to. It's obviously to do with the climate and just the world in general, but they will stay in this one place wherever they decide to establish themselves in a river, and they'll never leave that river for 20, 40, 50 years. And then actually, when they've caught them there and tagged them and dropped them off somewhere else, they'll, inside of 2 weeks, make their way back to that exact same place, and no one has any idea how. No one has any idea how they know. It's something to do with magnetism and the way they're receiving information in the world. But they will stay there for their entire lives, never move, never, ever move. And then they also go through 4 phases just to get to this. When they first are born, they're called they're called willow leaves. So they're just like these skinny little, completely see-through things that are riding the currents. Then as they work their way to the freshwater, they turn into glass eels, which are something of a delicacy now because you can't fish them anymore. But that's them trying to work. That's their like infancy. And then their adolescence is they turn yellowy brown, and that's when they get into the freshwater. And then once they establish themselves, they stay that for their entire lives, and then they'll turn into silver eels on their voyage back to the Sargasso Sea. And that is, if they see silver eels, it's like, they're on this is their dying wish, is just to make it to the Sargasso Sea and procreate. And no one's ever seen silver eels in the Sargasso Sea. They've only seen those little willow leaves leaving the Sargasso Sea. Mysterious, crazy.
Beautiful.
I want to know everything about them.
Yeah.
And we can't.
I mean, you just the tip of the iceberg that you just shared is so fascinating. We live among such fascination.
Right. And we think we have anything figured out. Are we kidding?
Are we kidding? And also, I taught another poetry workshop this weekend, and I keep going back to the fact that everything contains a world. If you just focus on one thing long enough, it teaches you so much about everything.
See, now this is the nonfiction I like. A really deep dive that I'm like, what? And I can't stop. And now all I care about is fucking eels. I'm like truly doing eel research in the dead of night. And I'm like, wait, Sawyer, I got a thing called, my son's advent calendar is Eel Facts. This is a plug for, there's a scientist called, God, I can't remember. She has like a clever handle. Maybe I'll look it up later, but she has an advent calendar that's just eel facts. You scratch it off and it's eel facts. And that, this book focuses a lot on the European and the American eels. Later, it talks about some eels in the south of Africa and Japan that have their own little things. Electric eels are not eels. I don't know if you knew that, but well, they're not true eels. There's a category called true eels. Electric eels are closer to like salmon.
Interesting.
They're closer to ordinary fish.
Scandalous.
But yes, kind of. Yeah.
Scandalous.
Misnomer. But they were talking about conger eels, which are enormous. They can get to be like 150 pounds. They're like twice the length of you.
Wow.
They can be like 10, 12 feet long. And I was like, are they also breeding in the Sargasso Sea? They fucking are, Josh. They absolutely are.
And they can't find them there either? The big 12-foot? Wow. How deep must they go? How deep must they go?
Some of the eels in the other seas have their own breeding grounds.
Okay.
That were a little easier to find. For 100 years, they couldn't even find that. They couldn't even get to that. They were taking out expeditions, like the same expeditions that were trying to cross the Arctic and trying to make it to the Americas. Like this exact same thing was happening in pursuit of eels. And they couldn't do it. They never did. People died. It's fascinating.
That is fascinating. There's a couple other books that come to mind. There's one about cod, and there's one about salt.
Well, here I go.
Yeah, so just to throw those onto your list, I read the one about cod. It's really interesting. It kind of talks about how, because the Basque people in northern Spain, southern France,
Spain, yeah,
because cod was they were like eating dried cod, but most of that dried cod was caught. There's like fossil records, but most of that was caught off of the coast of North America, and so there's thought that they might be the first Europeans to have contacted North America.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the whole how it factored into
a biography of the fish that changed the world.
Yeah,
this is the book.
Yeah,
Salt: A World History. Is that the book?
I believe. Yeah, that's Siobhan was reading that one. I don't know if she finished it.
I think Siobhan was telling me about this salt book.
Well, Siobhan also read a book about refrigeration that she got pretty fascinated by.
No, it was the refrigeration one. Yeah, I knew she would have. She did a deep dive on something.
We're all in the same somewhere. We land somewhere on the same part of the spectrum for sure.
I don't know dick about refrigeration. I'd love to read that.
Yeah,
I think this is the thing that I like, is if it can light something up in me, and I'm like, wow, here's a thing I never thought twice about. If it feels like, or if it's taking something I thought I knew well and peeling back a layer and showing me how little I actually understood it, that's great. But I think a fun read is actually sort of a prerequisite now.
I'm with you, and I love hearing people do what you just did, which is like walk me through a book that they read. I mean, that's the whole idea of this podcast, but like how much time, not just time, but like there's just only so many books you could read. And the fact that you gave me that run through on Eels was so much more satisfying than, any little Instagram reel I could have watched or, whatever. I love that. Do you respect eels enough to not eat them at a sushi restaurant?
No, this is sort of the issue is, I just finished this book last night, actually, that one of the kids from my oldest kid's preschool class, his dad, I was just talking to him on the sidewalk, and somebody was like, congrats. And I was like, congrats on what? And he was like, oh, I released a book last night. And I was like, what about? And he is like an embedded Arctic researcher who had like spent 9 years in the Arctic, like with the caribou herds and with Arctic wolves, truly sleeping in the pack with the wolves, and ingraining himself with the Inuits and learning all the sort of the perspective of what the Arctic represents from the natives versus the Westerners, which the Westerners, it was like a bunch of ice that needed to be broken up to establish a trading route. That's like the extent of it. And now it's a bunch of oil reserves that they need are sitting there wasted in the Western mind. And to sit and spend, I don't remember how many pages it was, 200 pages or something. It's an easy read with this. It's also like sort of strangely radicalizing because he's talking about the climate, of course, but he's not talking about it in terms of degrees centigrade and ice calving and water level increase. He's talking about it in terms of like caribou disappearing, and even the natives up there being reticent to blame it on that, being reticent to like call it a specific thing, because even that feels like a little too Western. And he talks a lot about how he would have this curiosity, kind of like the question you had. They were talking about, they were ice fishing, and they would just drop nets in and like pull out dozens and dozens and dozens of fish over and over and over and over and over again. And he was like, don't you feel like aren't you diminishing the supply at some point? Are you worried about that? Was basically, he was just like asking the question, and they were like, it's a sort of different mindset, which was just largely like, it's our responsibility to, and this is our relationship. Like if we stop interacting with them, they'll stop interacting with us. And there is sort of an old spiritual mentality to that, which is like, they're here to serve us, and so we have to keep showing them their worth by killing them and eating them in the most respectful possible way, which, like, you start to lose me when it talks about when any sort of religion enters the conversation, but just the like idea that we approach so many of these conversations with an amount of information that is already entirely westernized.
Yes.
And just watching the way listening to see how other people's brains are reacting to those same circumstances is something I wouldn't have really ever thought to do that. Anyway, the reason I brought this up is because you brought up eating eels, and there is this idea that not fishing them responsibly, but not fishing them does make the problem worse. They've tried this. They've tried to like cut all fishing entirely, and I'm not really equipped to speak on how, but it is the perspective of all these eel advocates that you should continue eating them.
Maybe it's like a survival of the fittest thing without.
Maybe there's also like, yeah, there's something to that. And there's also, like a herd culling thing that needs to happen.
But also bringing up the Inuit perspective from that book, which I'm curious if you remember what it's called, but also.
Yes, it's called Frost Lines. I just finished it last night. The author's name is Neil Shea. Didn't even know his last name until 3 days ago. And now I know everything about him. I know he's from the suburbs of Massachusetts. I fully cried. He talks about his boys a lot in it. There's this beginning chapter or two are about this Arctic wolf pack that he ends up spending a lot of time with. And he's like a casual observer. He's there. He works for the National Geographic for a time, and he's there to like write specific stories. And the wolves had been in the States decimated because they were just scary to the colonialists, the people who came over, and they were like, oh no. But the wolves love people in the Arctic. They're not scared of people at all. They are not threatened by them, so they are not threatening to them. And Americans, or people came to the Americas and were like, ooh, big scary wolf, kill them all. And so they've been like there are entire genuses of the wolf species that are eradicated off the face of the earth because we were like, oh no, wolves, and killed them all. And yes, of course, they were like counterproductive to what we were trying to do, but they were here first, obviously, and they were just like trying to live their lives and do what wolves do. But it's really sweet to hear him talk about these wolves, and he's talking about at the end of the chapter, he's talking about how he really ended up loving these wolves so much, and he would like sleep in their cave, in their den, and when he left, he was back with his kids and he was talking about them, and he found himself really hoping that they would develop the same sort of fondness for the wolves. And like a kid does, they would be like, oh, cool. And then, 8 days later, they would have fully forgotten about it. And he's sitting there in the book discussing like whether or not that idea, the idea of his experience there in his brain is sort of like hardening and turning into myth, as sort of our life experiences kind of do, and then fading from view. And he felt himself clinging to it and feeling like really sad about the loss of that experience with them. And I'm like fully crying reading about his poetic take, this National Geographic reporter's extraordinarily poetic take on his experience with wolves.
And this is a man on the sidewalk in New York City. But you.
Yeah. He was just like a very nice guy. We see each other at the playground all the time. Our kids I don't think they love each other. I don't think they're great. I don't think they're great buddies. They adore each other. And when it's just the two of them at the playground, they play pretty hard. But I've spent like many, many afternoons with him. And now I, of course, read it, and I feel like the biggest little bitch that he's like spent years of his life in the Arctic wilderness. And I'm like, I've probably been on a bench being like, pretty chilly today, man. Wowee.
Well, but you bring up a good point of when I brought up the eel question, it's like, well, just because you know something doesn't mean you sever your like relationship to it. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I kind of brought in such a Western mindset. I'm like, well, now that you know about eels, are you not going to eat them? But it's like, well, no, the Inuits know everything about the fish that they're catching, and that deepens the relationship to eating them rather than,
so there's, he talks about the caribou. They have such massive herds. I didn't know any of this either. That they've like run pathways into the ground that they've changed the landscape of the ground, making their web of, what's that called? When they migrate, their migratory paths, they're like worn into the ground. Because I'm talking like thousands and thousands and thousands in a herd. And some of these herds, they have like specific names, and I don't know if they're named for like a genetic specificity or if they're named just colloquially, but these herds have diminished so much, and there's sort of a theory among them that the Inuits westernized they were all nomads. They just like they went where they had to go, and they had their own sort of migratory path. And as they planted and then it waited for animals to come to them, they then were seeing those herds diminish, and they sort of blame themselves for that diminishing, for that disappearance. Like, well, of course, they describe their relationship with them as very interpersonal. It's not like hunter and hunted. It's personal, and there's like almost a respect from the animal's perspective in their minds about their relationship. And so, again, this gets a little spiritual for my atheist brain, but it is sort of beautiful to think about all these things sort of coalescing, and that, like, kind of classic food pyramid conversation being almost circular, seeing this like as opposed to apex predator and everyone else, it's like a circular relationship that, yes, people are killing these things, but they're also getting something from the people, and the people are also getting something. There's a word I'm looking for, if you can't feel me just like treading water here, but I'm trying to.
There's a kinship. There's a
kinship's a good
interrelationship.
One. Interrelationship's also good.
Interdependence.
Something more specific, and I will let it lie, because if you can't tell, I get hyperfixated.
There's an ecosystem. There's an echo chamber. There's an algorithm.
We're getting away from it.
We are artificial intelligence between the two.
Yeah, we've lost it. And that's a good time to plug Google AI. It's brought to you by, can't think of a single AI company's
name. What's David thinking? Neuralink.
I was reading about some screenplay competitions that their feedback in the last couple of years. They're specifically calling out Austin Film Festival. I think they've maybe changed since this, but they were calling out how they had clearly run the screenplays through an AI, and then the AI was giving this feedback, because one of the things you're paying all the money for is notes, whether or not it gets through to the competition.
Yeah. Please, can a human read this, please?
And really, not even when you pay however much you pay to submit your screenplay to the Austin Film Festival.
So it was all the like AI language stuff that people have caught on to delve,
and just
as we delve into your screenplay.
Oh yeah, I don't know the specific verbiage, but I do know they were like, it would latch on to some piece and then talk about that as a thematic thing, and they were like, that's the writers are like, what? That's not a theme of the piece at all. Yes, there is a scene in there about that, and it's just like filling in the blanks with like, this is a problematic portrayal of women, and he's like, yes, intentionally so. That's the characters have a problematic understanding of women. That's the point. But of course, a computer would just like reduce it to that.
Yeah. Well, that's terrible.
Anyway, AI.
Yeah, one more little terrible change in our world.
I don't want to read about AI.
Every time I hear Western civilization now, I read somewhere in a book, it's like, hey, that's just code for white people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
it is
so brutal. I'm reading my nonfiction book that I'm chipping away at. Two of them, David Graeber books. One is Debt. The other is The Dawn of Everything. And I'm chipping away at Dawn of Everything. And right now I'm at the part where he's like, yeah, so like the Enlightenment era in Europe, how we're just told, oh, suddenly everyone's like springing into thoughts about democracy and equality and science-based thinking and all this. It's like, well, it's no coincidence that that's happened during the exact time they were coming into contact with indigenous people in the Americas.
Interesting.
And the thinkers of the time would even credit the indigenous thoughts because people would go there, they'd write journals about their interactions, come back. There was very much a philosophical exchange, even amid the disease and the war and genocide and whatever. There were all these patches, these moments of human exchange. And so
this is like the explosion of culture in the early 20th century after the slaves were freed. It's like, it's no surprise that all of a sudden we are inheriting this very long and hard-earned cultural identity, and then it's just like, whoa, how exciting. This is so exciting. And then you just like take it for yourself.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know. So that's where my reading is right now. And my brain's just like, oh, of course. Yeah, of course.
I've tried to read a couple books like these, like A Short History of Nearly Everything, or, you know these books.
Yeah, Bill Bryson wrote that. I think I read that.
Bill
when
Bryson
I was like 18, 19.
Yeah, exactly. I like limped through it. I feel like I keep looking back to see.
Yeah, it's hard.
Sapiens is one of those that I like.
Something has kept me away from Sapiens. I feel like it's too pop culture-y. I'm skeptical of the writer. He has
Yuval something, Noah Harari.
Yeah, I'm picking up spiritually Zionist energy there, so I'm keeping my distance.
Oh, interesting. There's something to it. I mean, when he's getting like very academic and talking just about, the sort of foundations of our species, there's like something really compelling there. But it does feel like I really had, that one was work, and I had like picked it up and put it down so many times that I was like, okay, we're getting through it. And so probably, I don't know, 8 years ago, I just like limped through it.
The reason I don't read that book is most of the time the people who recommend Sapiens to me are people who don't read books otherwise.
I think it is a lot of that. Yeah,
it's their one book.
It's like Capital. Like that Capital is on everybody's bookshelf, and it's like a prop. It's on my bookshelf it's fully.
That was the one you talked about earlier by Thomas Piketty or whatever.
Yeah, Piketty.
Piketty. Okay, yeah. I thought you meant Capital by Marx and Engels.
I don't know that one. Is this a joke?
No, that's the real book, Capital, like by Karl Marx.
It's Marxist. Oh yeah.
It is.
I also have some other Marx on the shelf. I'll do that.
That one. I read a picture book of Marx's Capital, and even that was challenging my brain. You need to do it with a group or a class or something, or a companion reader, because Marx.
My understanding of Piketty is that he is trying to make the Marxist Capital book more digestible and kind of westernize the language a little bit, but it's eluded me or evaded me.
Yeah, I
think either place.
That's the issue, is even the explanations are too hard for me sometimes. But I did just finally read the Communist Manifesto by Marx, which I never have, and I'm like, oh, this is where everything we've been regurgitating comes from. I mean, it's an easier read. It's much more accessible on purpose, and man, did it fire me up. I was like, oh, this is AI. This is what AI is. All of our issues with all of it. It's all cyclical, and it's all the same.
Untold History of, it's that Oliver Stone book that's up there. Untold History.
How's that?
These are the books that you're other books in this category that I've had for 15 years that I probably will never read, but are all sort of in this, like, I have a bunch about God. There's one that's called like God and Gold that I was.
Yeah, I'll never read those.
The God Delusion. I did finally make that.
Was that Christopher Hitchens or something?
Richard Dawkins is his name.
Richard
the guy
Dawkins.
Who wrote the God Delusion.
Okay.
Kind of famous British atheist.
That's right.
I did like that one, actually, but that was one of those ones where I just like nodded my head the entire time and then like couldn't remember a single bullet point. This is me with reading in general, which is why I think the reason nonfiction books are so hard for me is also because the investment doesn't really appreciate. I have this kind of like guttural real-time reaction to the stuff I'm reading, and I'm like, oh shit, oh yes, absolutely. Dog ear every fucking 5th page, sometimes like underlining when I have a pen, and I don't remember a single thing. I remember like vibes, and my brain just doesn't absorb information like that. I can process in the short term really well. And like, because I just finished this eel book, I can regurgitate some of that information. But like, talk to me in 6 months, I promise you, I'll be like, there's something about eels that's really cool. And I'll be Googling it, and I'll be asking a computer to tell me what is cool about eels. And so this is why I do like spending a little bit more of my energy in the fiction world, just because those vibes, like the vibes I'm talking about, are the book. Like I don't need to remember the specific bullet points of how. Like I'm trying to think about the Grapes of Wrath, and I'm remembering something about the ending that I won't spoil for the people.
Yeah.
Who are gonna, but like I remember very few. I remember vignettes, and I remember like general shapes, and I remember the feeling that it elicited. But I don't feel like I've lost anything by investing that time in that book, because if I had read the actual Dust Bowl book that's on that shelf that I read, I don't know, 50 pages of, I would be like, something about the Dust Bowl's bad, and that would be sort of the end of my recollection of it. I have a whole stack of nonfiction books here that I think are more in the category of like fun to read deep dives. Oh, this one about tobacco.
Whoa.
The cigarette.
It looks like a box of Marlboro Reds.
Good branding, huh? Really good.
Yeah.
This is about specifically tobacco farming, how it like almost immediately was racist, and the way that tobacco was traded was early days big business squeezing out small time farmers, big cigarette manufacturers owning and running the entire game, and then squeezing out the little farmers, keeping the crops that they would buy in the family, and then intentionally starving out some of those smaller farms and then buying those smaller farms up. And a lot of those smaller farms in the dawning days of this empire were Black owned. This was like one way that Black families could try and make lives for themselves. And so there were these like couple generations old Black farms that were getting refused at the big, I don't know what the terms are for any of these things, but they would like meet up in a specific place, and that's where they'd all sell their tobacco, and they would be passed over a million times in favor of more expensive crops from bigger farms. Just basically anything that speaks to our intrinsic and horrifying racist beginnings is I would have never thought of tobacco as being part of that problem. I think of it as being problematic in a million other ways. The ways we know, the like front facing, them burying, and that's covered in this book too, like burying research to make sure people didn't figure out that it was giving them cancer, specifically, spending money to make sure that people are continuing to infect themselves with a very deadly disease as long as they keep making money, things like that. But that was a fun one.
It resonates because I'm endlessly fascinated with like just how deeply immoral this world is, and all the ways it's hidden from us and then unconcealed and brought to light.
I know it feels a little silly to like sit in our coastal elite apartments and talk about the the evils of,
but I almost wonder if
humanity.
They pack us into our cities so that they could do unspeakably bad things to the land, and we don't see it.
I think you're right. I mean, I think it feels so distant. Actually, that book about the Arctic spends a lot of time saying, like, we think about it and we're sort of like, oh, the ice is going away. And that's sort of like all we really think about it. It feels so distant that even if it's truly terrifying, and even if the scale is like truly apocalyptic, we're still here, and it's like feels like winter here.
It hasn't touched us
like,
yet, and I think we've been severed for that reason.
Yeah, exactly. When it does touch us, it touches us in like such abstract ways that it's really easy to explain away, especially if the powerful people are explaining it away.
That's right.
For us.
That's right. If your media is owned by 8 men. And
this fucking monopolization that's happening right now. I'm sure you're up on this Warner Brothers situation, but it's so crazy.
And
it's also crazy.
It's crazy. It's
more the Paramount Skydance.
They're the
hostile takeover, the like Jared Kushner, China owned
Larry Ellison, Jared Kushner, the Saudi elites, and right before the midterms, and they're gonna buy out CNN, and CNN isn't even close to alternative media. It's like it's conservative.
CNN's already bought out. It's already Zaslav. It's like basically what Fox News was in the 90s.
Yeah, that's right. I say that in the New York Times is like Fox News for people who like crossword puzzles.
Oh my God, did you see there was an op-ed from Nancy Mace? Like, why is Nancy Mace getting op-ed time in the New York fucking Times? Oh, you did say that. I did see your...
Yeah, it's just, it's the way, it's the way, there's 8 or 10 really rich men competing with and against each other, and the media is just how they communicate to one another.
Yeah, did you see all this? Speaking of AI companies, it's just like 8 companies trading $1 trillion invisible dollars that like don't actually exist.
Pumping each other's stock prices up.
Yeah, you're all worth trillions of dollars. Says who? You just gave each other $1 trillion invisible dollars. What?
Yeah.
How did we get to this point? It's so far removed from reality, and this kind of speaks to what you were saying earlier. Everything is so sectioned off from us in any real way. Even the things that we are actively contributing to, even the like services we buy and the economies we contribute to, we don't understand a single thing about it. And I have credit cards, and I would like to buy a house and take on crippling debt at some point. And like I have an investment IRA that's like stocks. Like, what is that? I don't have any actual money. I own a bunch of pieces of companies that are sort of invisible and being propped up over and over again by political economies that may or may not support it in the future. And I'm just like, I guess I have a retirement plan. What? What? And everybody, for years, I just kept I had saved like $30,000 in my first job, and I just sat on it. And like 15 years later, some of my friends from high school were like, how much is it worth now? And I was like, $30,000. I've not touched it. It's like basically under a mattress. And they were like, so you lost a lot of money. That should be worth like $42,000 or whatever appreciation. I was like, okay, I guess I lost money, but I have actual money. You have what? You could have lost all of that. And you may still.
Yeah.
I'm glad yours is worth $40,000, but it's not actually worth anything.
No, that's right.
Unless we all agree it is.
That's right. Well, yeah, and it's intentionally opaque so that so that a few people can speak a language that we can brush past and not understand.
Yes. It's like trying to settle medical debt. Like I can't speak to this, and it's trying to do your taxes, trying to do your own taxes. I had a corporation for 10 years. I did every year do my own taxes, and every year for each of my quarterly returns, my March corporate return, my April personal returns, all the deadlines I had to hit, every single time, it was like going back to war. I would sit and I'd have to do a full re-education. And this is because I had the time and the capability and the mental aptitude, and I was fucking fried. Like I am, but this is to your point.
I mean, like you calling us coastal elites, it's like, dude, I'm living in my father-in-law's shack. You're paying an arm and a leg for your apartment, like,
and we're priced out of our neighborhood. We're trying to afford how to figure out how to stay here so that our kid can go to preschool for free. Like this, we're like, well, maybe we can take on a little bit more money because if we were going to send him to private preschool, we'd be spending $30,000 a year.
Therein lies the media manipulation. It's like, we're
exactly.
Yeah, we
actually have coastal elite.
We have it better than some of these towns you drive through.
This is why I'm a diehard union advocate. It's the only thing that equalizes us. It's the only thing that like actually can speak. I'm rolling my eyes at myself for saying this. Truth to power.
Yeah, no,
but it really is the only.
It's the only accepted mechanism right now.
Right.
That like
and
has some kind of.
They want us to sit in our little pockets and feel like we don't really understand it, and so it's easy to just be like,
We're both complacent.
It could be worse.
We're complacent and we're desperate and exhausted, and so it's like It's hand in hand. It's like, yeah, I want to act, but I've been atomized. I've been severed from community, and who has my back when I act? And yeah, I mean that's the thing. Why don't we do it like France, dude? We don't have healthcare unless we have a job. Right. You know, some people have sick kids. They have to keep their job for their sick kids. You know, it's like. Man, but yeah, I'm with you. Unions.
Yeah, it's like the free market dictates the terms. That the market isn't free. Like I can't actually choose to leave. Like you're saying, you can't choose to leave situations because there's especially with monopolization, no viable alternative. Like people literally can't afford to not use Amazon. It's like one of the great shames of the way things have progressed, or like you can't afford to leave your job. Yes, it would be great to be like, I'm being mistreated. I'm not being paid enough. Let's walk. But we all need insurance, and we don't have healthcare if not for that job. And no jobs fucking offering insurance, especially part-time jobs, don't offer healthcare insurance. So of course the Starbucks workers are like, I don't know, this is kind of good actually. They do like give some money to your children's education fund, and they do have what would be the sort of equivalent of a union fund for when people's medical bills get too imposing. But it feels kind of like they wouldn't be working so hard to keep you from unionizing them if that was actually good for you. And all just so like a few people can make a few more $1 million. I really don't understand that part of it. I guess I've just never had money, but I don't know why when you have that much money you want.
I think it's like if you can understand addiction, that's where it's like greed is just an addiction. So why does the alcoholic need their 11th drink? Why can't they just have a few beers?
That's true.
It's just that part of the brain goes haywire.
Yeah, the reasoning part is out the door.
Yeah, and you hear them talk. They're like their brains are mush. They're moronic. Like it's eating away their brain. These are not smart men.
Yeah,
but they just control the levers of power. And yeah, we haven't learned to take the power back yet collectively. Not that we haven't learned. I mean, reading Grapes of Wrath too. It's like we are born kidnapped. There is no land. I can't go. Okay, maybe the Arctic. But who's trained me to live in the Arctic? That's not, you know what I mean? And it's like, even just getting there, I'll need to risk my life, either hitchhiking or, so the point, I mean, that's just so extreme. And life actually hasn't been that level of extreme.
He brings up, in this Arctic book, it was really front of mind for me. He brings up this interesting question, which is like, when is someone indigenous? When have you, because no one's indigenous, obviously. Everyone has come from somewhere. The Inuits in the Arctic came across the land bridge from Europe some billions of years ago, or millions of years ago. So, like, at what point are you indigenous? And it is just funny to think about the way colonization happened, because it existed inside of the natural world, not on top of it, not like turning that natural part of the world off. And he doesn't ever actually arrive at a conclusion, but you think about the way Inuit communities or native communities all over the world established themselves. It existed within the world that it was a part of, the natural world that it was a part of. And all of the sort of post-medieval colonial world just comes in and insists on its own way of life, and insists on, and then of course now we describe ourselves as deserving, but to me that's kind of the distinction, is like whether you humbly enter the world or you enter it from this perspective that you're saving these poor people, or this is going to be a better use of this land and space than whatever you were doing before.
Yeah, and to maintain an ecosystem is indigenous, whereas to extract and export and import and, like you said, create a whole new world within it. Like, all the fucking rose gardens in Southern California and the front lawns, it's like trying to make this like white Victorian England in like this Mediterranean chaparral, dry desert like climate. And all the lawns in Palm Springs, it's like
It's golf courses in Palm Springs. That's what I was going to say. It's fucking insanity.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, this has been two 40-year-old white men talk about the ills.
We're two of the good guys. Remember that, folks.
I cannot wait to listen back to this and roll my eyes.
I mean, look, isn't the first step to think about things and to talk about things? Not even the first step. I mean, it takes so many steps just to get your brain into, hey, what is closer to the truth in reality? And I mean, dude, especially when it's trying to be obscured every second of the day, like we have to cling to an agreed upon reality that's not what we're being fed.
Yes, the internet situation is really sort of stabbing.
The internet, but like older folks, they're watching 60 Minutes every Sunday and reading the newspaper, and that's not better either. That just felt more trusted and physical and mild mannered, but it was still the same evil pulse.
And I think, you know, I don't know. I think at a point
there might have been some real journalism. It points.
Yeah, of course there was. There was like some real clinging
speaking truth to power.
Yeah, and being a real honest to God journalist who wasn't afraid of the repercussions, because that was a tenet of democracy, and that was like, you know, specifically one of the tent poles of democracy. Now, I do think there was a time, of course it's always been corruptible, and of course it's always been corrupted in corners, but I do think in large part the 60 Minutes from its dawning days just barely resembles anything in the news sphere now.
Yeah, I was reading Malcolm X's autobiography, and he was saying how he respected Mike Wallace.
Interesting.
And, you know, Mike Wallace, who we watched as an older man on 60 Minutes, and it's like...
Yeah, he was like 150 years old.
Yeah, what radical do we know now who would respect anything happening on 60 Minutes? It's brutal.
No, I mean, you're lucky if... What's her name?
Barry Weiss.
Stahl.
Oh yeah, Leslie Stahl. Well, she had on Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Trump got mad about that.
This is what I was going to point out. Yeah. I mean, even her, like, just the slightest bit of pushback, and we're all like, "Thanks, finally, someone's fucking saying something." Like, we're so desperate for it because it just washes over us. We all feel so insane all the time.
So insane all the time. Yeah.
I do think one of the things that I like this idea of well-intentioned people treading into this territory and like not being afraid of tiptoeing around subjects and not trying to like for fear of seeming unintelligent or out of touch, or, you know,
or virtue signaling,
whatever, or virtue signaling. Right. I think there's like, I am a little bit hungry for, I feel like I've been sort of paralyzed in the last few years, and I feel like there's got to be a way to break us out of that.
Yeah. Well, how about your books? Anything left you really wanted to get off your chest, or do you feel good about where we landed? Because
Henry Wallace.
Okay. So what does that say? American Dreamer? American Dreamer.
This is this is like 700 pages or something, but I ate it up. I'll tell you what, I read this years ago. This one is one that stuck with me. This guy, he was the vice president for FDR in his third term only. He had a different vice president his first term, a different vice president in his second term, had Henry Wallace as his third vice president. And for his fourth term, during the convention, when they, you know, now largely it's ornamental, they're largely just like pretending to pick a candidate, and they're having a vote, but it's all predetermined. This was in the days of like the real convention, and like, you're making speeches, you are coming for the vote. Those votes are changing in real time. People are whipping votes on the floor in the moment. They're whipping votes overnight. And Henry Wallace had been this guy. He's a very simple guy. He's extremely progressive, even by today's terms. He actually sort of accidentally is responsible for genetically modified vegetables, because he was just obsessed with like corn. He was obsessed with farming, and he just like loved it, and sort of figured out how to make corn grow faster and how to make it more fruitful. And it was like a simple guy who loved farming and nature, and was very progressive by today's term. FDR, I don't remember, I have to go back, but I don't remember why he selected him for his third term. But FDR was like clearly not super well, even though he was the odds-on favorite to win the election again for his fourth term. This is before term limits, and maybe before the end of term, the now approaching end of term limit. During the convention, all of the establishment people in the party really didn't want him to win, because if FDR died in office, then Henry Wallace, this extremely progressive guy, would be president. Extremely progressive and simple, and he is not shapeable. Like, he is not moldable by the establishment. He's not moldable by the elites. And so he gives this really impassioned speech. It's like night 3 of the convention. It's uproarious. Whatever it's called, Proctor calls the vote, and somebody, I don't remember what happened. Someone either stages something catastrophic, or like a heart attack or something, to stop the vote. they spend the night overnight whipping votes for Truman, who then becomes the presumptive nominee the next day because they've whipped votes overnight. Henry Wallace loses it, goes happily into his like sweet farm life retirement. But then Truman is the man who eventually drops the atomic bomb. And so kind of the premise of the book is, if Wallace had won, would we have nuclear warfare? Which is kind of fascinating.
Kind of a huge pivot point.
A huge pivot point, and also a huge pivot point in terms of like how the sausage gets made politically. Obviously this was happening, people were whipping votes, but there was something that was more person to person about it, something that was more real time, people trying to elect people that had the nation's best interests at heart, and not corporate stool pigeons who would be easily moldable by the establishment. And I think Truman largely, even internally, was referred to in that way, like he can be our puppet.
Well, and it's like you said, the Steinbeck Grapes of Wrath, when he wrote it in the late 30s, that was like a conversation that was being had more commonly. And even FDR, the whole New Deal thing was about pushing back the rise of workers' parties. Communists, they were like, we got to give them some. And big business was not happy, but they're like, look, we either give them this or they're going to take all of it. And so that was like a very real thing, like workers' movements. You and I were just talking about how disbanded we are because we've seen workers lost. Like Reagan fires the airport workers and guts the unions and gets everyone hopped up on the, hey, make your own, whatever, pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality.
Yes, exactly.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you're pumping me up. And
no,
then even in
and it's like crazy to think about. This was only 20 years before Reagan. This was only 20 years before we're having that conversation. No, it's less than that. I mean, more than that. It's like 30 years before that. But it's very recent. Like this is in those people's lifetimes, this was all happening. And it feels like sort of this is Divergent Roads territory. This is like when the story splits and we made a really specific choice. And of course, I'm reading this one story and it's in a microscope, but it does feel like it feels sort of emblematic of a bigger split that happened sociologically for us as people and as a country. Yes, like these nefarious, powerful bodies were in power. They just sort of were like shut out during the times when the economy collapsed or when there were wars, which is when FDR came into office. So they had like a brief momentary withdrawal from their position of power, and then this is their like snapback attempt. It's easy for me to characterize it like this. It's obviously a lot of pieces in motion here, but
that is what it is. And then we got the like half-assed version of it when Gore lost to Bush in the early 2000s, which is like, I don't think things would have been that much better, but they would have been better.
Yeah, of course they would have.
But we saw it in real time. How
this guy, look at him.
Just a good old-fashioned farmer. Progressive except for the GMOs, although the spirit behind GMOs is kind of progressive, especially coming out of the Dust Bowl and all that.
Extremely progressive, actually. And it really is like it's about making farming more egalitarian, giving more people more access to being able to grow good crops, because until that point, there was no version of it aside from owning tons of land so that you could do crop rotations, and you would lose for whichever year you're doing the cover crop, which you can't sell for much money. You just lose all that square footage. So the big farms, the bigger the farm, the bigger the yield, because you could do cover crops and lose that entire stretch. And the GMOs he was doing was trying to figure out how a crop could yield every single season without ruining the soil. It still ruins the soil, obviously. And this was not for like corporations to have bigger profit margins. Right, This is so that people's seeds can actually grow them food.
They're not losing their farms to the banks because they have a couple bad years.
That's right. I mean, that's the intention behind it. And like so many things, the good intention sort of got displaced by corporate greed.
It's like good intention within the corporate greed world. It's like in a softened world, things would move slower. People would be, it's like you're not you don't need that yield, that same yield, you know. And yeah, I read that book, How to Hide an Empire, and I think he has
I love that.
Yeah,
one.
he has that chapter on like bat guano and how like the U.S. took over all those islands to mine bat shit for fertilizer.
And people are just dying for fertilizer, and then like 5 years after they really have the death grip on it, it's completely outdated and outmoded, and they don't use it at all. And so those islands just sit there and rot. And they're like, okay.
Yeah, not really ours anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, they still are, but we're not going to like do anything or provide for them or take care of them in any real way.
Yeah.
And all the people we displaced, just like, yeah, well.
Yeah, and all the people who had to work that terrible, terrible work.
And inhale those deathly fumes. Oh well.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, onward and upward, as they say.
Okay, I have 2 more quick ones just because I'm still going.
Let's do it.
This is from a friend of mine, a Kim Jong Il Production. Do you know about this? Kim Jong Il, North Korea, is obsessed with Western culture.
Right.
This is Kim Jong Un's father. This is, the previous generation of leadership in North Korea. He's so obsessed with Western culture. South Korea has a sort of robust film, not empire, I was going to say empire, but film industry. And he kidnaps a husband and wife. One is a director. The wife is like a leading lady, ingenue in South Korean film. He kidnaps them, forces them to live in his backlot he has built in North Korea, and make him movies for his own consumption.
Wow.
For like a decade.
Sounds like the dream.
Yeah, right. I'll make your propaganda films, buddy. Just give me health care.
Work.
But
I mean, is that any different than the merger that's about to happen? Sorry. Okay.
It's not. No, it's not dissimilar.
The woman escapes to China.
It's just so funny to me. This like distaste for Western culture, but also this simultaneous obsession with it, and then like needing to have it yourself, but not wanting to actually have the real bona fide thing because that challenges your worldview.
Well, it speaks to this
fully kidnap people.
It speaks to the seductiveness of Western culture, and that's what's so hard about it. Sure. Is like, yeah, the graphic images are so powerful. And yeah, Kim Jong Un, his son, went to boarding school in Switzerland, and he was like obsessed with the NBA, and he was like,
I remember
Jordans and stuff.
What's his name? Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, he had Dennis Rodman
buddy with him. Yeah,
I mean, that's a whole thing that as I learn more and more about the splitting of North Korea to North Korea to Russia and South Korea to the U.S. and how all that manifested, it's like, oh boy, oh boy, things aren't so simple. There aren't just tyrants living everywhere. I mean, yeah, speaking to this huge merger, it's like, so the Ellisons bought Paramount and CBS, they bought TikTok, they're trying to buy Warner Brothers. Tell me the difference besides title. Like, what's the difference here? There's a few competing elites.
Well, yeah, no, I think
these are royals. This is royalty. This is what
the dissolution of the antitrust, any sort of antitrust regulating body, is like the Pam Bondi DOJ is supposed to be policing this, and of course they're not. And of course they're like, there were cases that had been in the pipeline for years that were ready to go to trial, that she just like in a wave of a wand was like, no, it's fine. And then that merger goes through. But they would stomp on the Netflix acquisition of it because Netflix is like not in their family, but they will not step on the Paramount Skydance acquisition of it because that literally is their actual family.
Right.
And this is what ruling classes are and do. This is what they are.
Well, that's what monopoly is. Monopoly is fascism. That's the centralization of power. And how do you speak against it if it's all?
And when one of the bodies in question is the journalistic tentpole, like one of the tentpoles is not anti-monopoly, and one of the tentpoles is journalistic freedom of speech, and we're just like dissolving two of them in one fell swoop. I'll be very curious to see what happens. And
that book sounds awesome. Did you say your friend wrote it?
Yeah, Paul Fisher. He wrote Actually, that movie you went to my premiere with.
Whoa.
Me.
So did he write this book after that?
No, he had written it before. I bought it while we were shooting that.
Cool.
And he's written a couple more. He's writing one about I think it comes out soon, about sort of legendary filmmaking families. There's another one. It doesn't matter. Paul Fisher's his name. He's like a really fun to read, nonfiction, journalistic minded author. And he also recommended this book, which is Wicker Man. Do you know about this?
No.
Do you know the movie Wicker Man?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't need to get into it, but there's a plagued production called The Wicker Man. It's a British film from, I think, the 60s. And the story of the making of The Wicker Man is more of a horror film than the film itself. It's like it's sort of a Wicker Man, the movie, it's just based on a book, I believe, is like what was that movie a couple years ago?
Yeah, like The Disaster Artist. It's like a notoriously known schlocky film.
No. The film is just a film about like a pagan society, and they worship this. They burn this Wicker Man at a specific time of the year. I actually can't remember what it's about. But what was that film a couple years ago where these two like wanderers wind up in this strange pagan
Midsummer?
Midsummer.
Yeah, I never saw that either.
That was a very fun watch, but it's sort of in that world. But the making of the film was just a catastrophe, and it was largely a catastrophe because, as so many film productions do, they wanted more than they were willing to pay for, and they hired a lot of big personalities. It's just a fun read. I
love film making as microcosm for just human organization. And
100%. I mean, it couldn't be. It's the clearest. It's to me seems to be the clearest microcosm.
Like when I found out Mamdani is a good AD, assistant director, I was like, okay, he's got a shot at being a good mayor.
Exactly right. Yes,
when you see the person organizing all these egos, and from everyone from blue collar workers to movie stars, it's a microcosm of the country at large. Being
instead
on a
of
film
like Jeremy Strong being I have nothing bad to say about Jeremy Strong. He seems like a lovely guy. But did you read that New Yorker piece about him?
Yeah, like his intensity on set and all that.
Yeah, this piece actually sort of pissed me off, and I don't need to defend his honor because I don't know him at all. But he's like, for all intents and purposes, just taking his job very seriously, and they had no problem exploiting that for the good of the show, and they had no problem exploiting his relationship with those other actors for the good of the show. His relationship with his siblings is fraught. The relationship with his father is fraught, and you can feel it. And I feel like completely sure that it's because they were willing to exploit all of his behaviors for the good of the show. But also, we're going to sit here and like talk shit about how he's bad for the room or whatever. So I'm not interested in doing that. But my point is the like sort of ego-driven, number one on the call sheet mentality, that person being in a position of power versus the AD who is completely humbling himself around every turn and has no problem doing so. And that sort of person is the person you want in a position of power, not the person who thinks they should be in a position of power.
Yes, 100%.
This is not a Jeremy Strong dig. He's incredibly talented.
No, I think if anything, you're supporting him and speaking to.
Well, that I probably wouldn't have been if I hadn't read that piece. Like if I just kind of heard, like we all hear these horror stories about people. If I just heard them, I'd probably be out with beer, somebody being like, "Sounds like a nightmare," and that'd be the end of it. But I read that piece and I was like, "Wait, I was an actor for so long, and I felt like I'm a good employee. I'm really good for the room. I'm good because I'm taking everyone else's job into account. Like you're never going to wait for me on my coverage. We're never going to break meal penalty. We're never going to no one's going to lose their day because of me. The ADs are always going to be able to find me. The scriptie's never going to have to ask me about continuity twice. Like those, I'll never miss my mark. And if I do, I will adjust in the middle of my line. Like I feel like I always felt like I was such a good employee for all of those reasons. But if you've noticed, none of those things that I said I thought I was good at were the actual job. Like none of them were me thinking even one time about the thing I was there to do, which was be this character and compellingly play a person. And so I read that and I was like, wait, why do I think that the only way I can be good for a room, why do I feel like my best attributes, the entire list of things that I just gave you, none of them include being an actor in a role.
Best ability is availability.
Right. Yes, right. Anyway, Jeremy Strong had it figured out, I think. Although it did say you
didn't go missing on a PCP binge riding a motorcycle at night with no lights on it.
Well,
for instance,
he may have. I can't speak to it specifically. He did this is in the article, but he, in the middle of a scene, you know how this goes. For your listeners who don't, you line up a shot, you rehearse it, then you leave while stand-ins sit there and they light, you go to hair and makeup, and when you come back, all the cameras are pointed in the directions they need to be for what you've rehearsed an hour ago. All the lights are pointed in those positions. Any sound considerations have been made. Mics are in place, boom operators are in place, you're wired or whatever. So you can vary a bit, but you can't do much unless we've discussed that this is going to be an improv piece and we've lit in every direction, you're being followed on a Steadicam, and we're recording everybody at the same time. That's not the case for a massive single camera show like that show, which was called Succession. My God, I couldn't remember. Hanging by an absolute thread at the end there. Anyway, he, in the middle of some scene, it's his birthday party scene, if you remember the show, he's on stage giving a speech and he chooses to jump off the stage. This is not usable. I wasn't there, so I can't speak to it. But in every reasonable assumption, not usable. They haven't lit off the stage. Also, the entire crew is there. So, like, if they can swing a camera around to you, they can't use any of it because we see a whole film crew there. And when he jumped off, an unusable choice, he broke his ankle. And so they had to shut down production.
Oh,
cost them millions of dollars. Yes, like, that stuff is cartoonish and feels nightmarish. But also, this man is fucking alive in this part, and him being willing to jump off the stage in the middle of his speech is the reason he felt so untethered in the show, and that's why the show worked. Like, it is frustrating. There's certainly a middle ground there, and that seems like an extreme example, but
I was just
he's tremendous, and I'm a big fan.
Well, and a microcosm for all work environments. We all have coworkers and things sort of similar to that. And
I don't know if you have people jumping off stages
probably
and
not.
breaking their ankles, shutting down your work for
no, probably not.
Anyway, glad we got into that. Wow, we really got into all of
Books
it.
about film.
We didn't get into that book is about the film business.
What did we get into?
We didn't get into my ketamine. I thought we were going to dig into that, but I've been doing ketamine treatments for my vertigo.
Oh, whoa! How did that go?
I'm 3 into my 6 session. It's 6 in 3 weeks. I have to do. It's just fully drugs.
Yeah.
It's just fully doing drugs.
Is it fun?
So fun, yeah, because drugs are fun.
Is it helping the vertigo?
No, not at all. No, not even.
Like, we want to get you so high that you don't know down from up, and then the problem's
that is
over.
true, and that does happen, and that does feel actually like a sort of lovely break from it all. That I'm not worried about it in those moments.
Wow.
I am fully spinning, but spinning in a delightful way, and not in a white knuckling my stroller and trying to pick my kid up from preschool way.
Wow. Are you going to read any books, did you read any books about that kind of thing leading into it?
No. Do you have anything to recommend?
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. No.
Well, sure.
No.
I read a long time ago Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind.
Yeah.
If you read, did he write Omnivore's
He
Dilemma?
did.
He wrote
did.
it. He's written it.
He's one of those guys that I haven't really delved into for the same reasons we were talking earlier. It's kind of like...
Yeah. He had a follow-up book to that one that didn't hook me as much, but I just liked... He talks a lot about our physiology and why psychedelic drugs do what they do, why mushrooms... He talks a lot about mushrooms. Actually, this is in my same eel world. Like, I became obsessed with mushrooms because of this book. Not the drug mushrooms, just the mushroom. It's like not quite classified as plant or animal. It's kind of in between. And it's like, mycelia are the internet of the forest floor. And it was people tripping balls on mushrooms that inspired the actual internet. And there's kind of reason to believe that, our brains exploded at a certain point in human history in size. And that's why our gestation period has gotten so short and why we're born kind of technically premature, which opens up so much opportunity for what's the word for when you teach kids things that become emotionally ingrained in them before they have, before they can kind of outthink it. And there's a really good word for it. God, I'm going to get hung up on this one again.
Propaganda.
Yeah, propaganda is like a natural extension of it, but
influential, early influence.
Early influence. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. You can influence you can shape them much more emotionally.
Malleability.
Because malleability, sure. None of these are it. But anyway, there's reason to believe that it was because they ate mushrooms.
Yeah, the stoned ape theory or something.
Exactly, yeah. And there's reason to suggest that actually mushrooms, because they're the internet of the forest floor, but couldn't get through to things that weren't rooted in the forest floor, developed this thing so that they could sort of appeal to also the things that weren't rooted in the forest floor. There are certain species that specifically seek out these mushrooms and eat them and trip balls. But it's no mystery why when you eat a pile of mushrooms, you see nature in this different way, and you see like connectivity in the world, and anyway, it's a fascinating plant just by itself. And then, what it does to your brain is also fascinating, because it's not like you're not, what's the word, when you see things
hallucinating.
You're not hallucinating. It's not adding information. It's eliminating. You have, like, as you get older, your brain irises out information that isn't useful for survival. Which is why kids are like talking to invisible friends and like seeing an array of colors, and humans are just kind of this cold gray version of that. And when you take a hallucinogenic, it pops that iris open, and so you're receiving all this information that you've spent a lifetime trying to close out, which is why it can be kind of overwhelming and scary for people if it's information that you don't want, and if there's trauma, for instance, or whatever. So this is the theory behind ketamine, is that you do the same thing. You open your brain up to all this information. You can mine the depths, and you can change. Then afterwards, you can reshape your neural pathways. Now I just sound like I'm doing advertisement for them, but it's fully just drugs. But that you do have this. There's this opportunity. It's really great for people with depression or anxiety or addiction issues. Like people will do this 3 times and never drink again. Never do like uppers again. Or if you have OCD, or like these specific things that you can really target and then reshape with healthy patterns. So I don't have that necessarily. Mine is kind of obscure and abstract, and I'm just kind of, my acupuncturist was like, I've had clients with chronic pain who have had some success. So yours isn't pain necessarily, but it is chronic. So maybe you'll have some success too. But it is largely just been me sitting in a chair in an office in Midtown doing drugs.
And how long does that last? Like, how long are you in that chair?
Well, ketamine's very interesting. It's out of your system inside of 3 hours, like fully out of your system, but basically when the drip stops, you stop. It's intravenous. So you're on an IV, and then when you have an hour of drip, so when that's done, you're basically out of it. You might have a little haze.
Are you going to do the other half of it?
Yeah. Last night was my number 3, and we finally got up to a dose that was like kind of melting me into my chair. And now that we've had that, I feel a lot different, actually, than the first 2. The first 2 were kind of like murky, because I had one foot on the planet. In this one, I was never unaware of my environment either. But in the first 2, they were going really light because I'm vertigo prone. This is the whole reason I'm there. And they didn't want to trigger it, and they didn't want it to be traumatic. So those are like 2, I mean, obviously the traumatic experience is true for everyone, but if it triggers vertigo, it would be really hard. It's really hard for me to recover if it's triggered in a way that I'm not super aware of. Like if I wake up in a spiral, it's already gotten so bad that I kind of can't get the reins. But the first 2 just kind of like sucked, I'll be honest, because I was so close to feeling the thing that we were trying to feel, but my conscious mind was working so hard to keep it at bay, which is what our conscious minds are doing all the time. And so it felt like a struggle, and I was really exhausted by it, and it wasn't like fun. I'd like see some fun imagery, and I'd be like, ooh, I want to chase that around this corner, but then my brain would be aware of it, and then just by virtue of being aware of it, I'd snap out of it, and then you'd watch it like all go black. Even though it is black, I am wearing like a blackout mask, and they have like, I'm sure, I'm sure if I listen to it by sober light of day, the soundtrack they're playing is like LOL worthy drug soundtrack. But listen, it's drugs. It's legal drugs in an office in Midtown. It's not a bad way to spend an hour.
No way. Yeah, I want it to have good benefits for you, and it sounds like you've researched it enough, and you're going into it with an intention. It's for your health.
If you have any other psychedelic books, I did read Fear and Loathing a few years ago. I'm on this quest to just read a bunch of the things I should have already read.
Yeah,
but haven't.
So I mean, I know what you mean.
Have any more on that category?
Yeah, no, I don't. I did that.
I did this with Hemingway, and I'll tell you what, buddy, he's not speaking to me. I don't mean to besmirch.
I think you got to be in your early 20s or something, like to.
Oh, is that right?
I really enjoyed them in my early 20s, and then I'll flip open now, and I'm like, this isn't it. This is too self-serious.
I was in Pamplona, and they spend a lot of time talking about him when we were there, because he, I guess, lived there for a time or had an apartment there, and he wrote a book called The Sun Also Rises. Yeah. Is that him? And he wrote a huge act of it takes place in Pamplona. So that's why I started reading it. But something about it feels like very journal entry-ish, and he just sort of fictionalizes his own journal entry, which is interesting. It's like definitely interesting, but it's not. I don't get enveloped in his storytelling.
I think that's a good thing. I think if you were really into him at this age, it would be weird.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah. This is what I don't know. I just fully escaped the entire literature education that I think we're all meant to get.
Yeah, me too. Or I tuned it out. It didn't land with me. But then,
and at a certain age, it feels like kind of ridiculous.
It's tough because there's some names where I just read Grapes of Wrath and I'm like, it was revelatory. But then there's some names where you're like, oh no, that was just. The CIA was just pushing that one so that the rugged individual. I mean, let's highlight it. It's like that happened. Yeah. They pushed the stories with rugged individualism for a reason, and Hemingway is kind of the ultimate version of that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which is like the lonely.
What's Travels with Charlie?
That's
is that
Steinbeck.
Him? No, that's Steinbeck, right?
I read that in high school randomly. It's like about him as an old guy driving around with his dog.
Yeah, that one is a full journal entry. That's all it is. But that's why I put it in that category. I don't know. Are there other authors on this list I should be?
No, I'm loving what you brought in. I love this conversation. I feel like you.
I forgot about this one.
What's that?
Nathaniel West.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Love that.
Day of the Locust.
My God. So good, right?
Buddy, you remember my raccoon?
I do.
Somebody read it and was like, you know what this reminds me of? And they gave me this book.
That. And I think I said that.
Was it you? Hilarious. Well, whoever it was.
Some asshole. Yeah,
some
I
guy
said that.
I don't care for is why I'm pushing back on this in the moment, is what I almost said to complete it.
No, but so you ended up reading it, and you know what I mean?
It did, but it's the same fucking. He and I are doing the exact same thing, so I can't make my movie.
Yes, of course you can. Of course you can.
I think I have to credit it as an adaptation of the Day
No way. No,
not at all. But there are some real similar through lines. Like, my God.
I mean, that's what's amazing. I think I was talking about it actually a few episodes ago, how after one of the Writers Guild strikes, my friend Jamie and I were walking down Hollywood Boulevard, and they were closing it all off for the live action Little Mermaid movie. And
for the premiere,
and I thought, oh no, what if I get crushed to death?
Yeah,
like in the Day of the Locust, except it's for the Little Mermaid movie.
That's the exact same location too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right out in front of the Roosevelt Hotel, which is where the first Academy Awards were.
They were?
Yeah.
Somebody was just telling me that the Directors Guild choreography, was credited, is like a major part of early cinema. And they were credited as dance direction, and they used to have an Academy Award for dance direction. And the DGA lobbied the Academy to remove the category so that they were the only ones with the name director in their title.
Wow.
And then they kept the dance directors from joining their guild. And so choreographers haven't had an Academy Award until 2 years ago.
Whoa.
In the entire history of cinema. All of these other creative categories And just because the Directors Guild felt threatened and exclusive, someone's going to have to fact check me here.
They needed to come up with a different name. Like director of photography, they just call themselves cinematographers now.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's maybe why the word choreographers came to be.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. Man, I believe it.
But they're still not unionized. Choreographers still aren't unionized. They're trying to unionize. They just created their own guild, and they're maybe going to get absorbed by SAG, but DGA wouldn't have them. They wouldn't let them join.
Weird.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that's where you start peeling back the layers on unions, and you're like, there's nothing's perfect. Like, nothing's perfect.
Right. And it's like we were talking about with genetically modifying crops. Like, yes, there's a good intention behind a lot of this, and then at some point it does get bastardized. It like gets corrupted.
Yeah, you need checks and balances, and a lot of decentralization and whatever else, but easier said than done.
I'll tell you what, pal, I have 1% on this computer.
Okay.
Can you believe that?
Well, thank you for giving it all 99.9%, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. You made me like my podcast again. I'll have to edit that out.
Buddy,
but
I love this podcast. No, leave it in. What are you talking about? This podcast is like a soul balm.
I'm glad to hear
It's like
that.
a nice, soothing balm. I've divested from my phone, so I have deleted all apps, and I don't turn my phone on when I'm in my house. Wow. And I try not to look at it at all, but the one thing I am mourning the loss of is this podcast, and I need to figure out a way to get that back in the rotation.
Yeah, it's here. It's here when you're ready. I'm just banking them for that time. But yeah, I'm so glad you came on. I love your reads. I love talking books with you in person and remote. And I can't thank you enough for joining me. Your computer froze. Wow, this really might be it. Your battery might have died. If you can hear me, thank you, David Hull. And if you can hear me, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Turek Books, and happy reading out there.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Turek Books. Be sure to like, subscribe, thumbs up, any kind of thing that could help us get listened to or watched by more people. We really appreciated having you and hope to see you again next week with a new guest and plenty of books. Take care until then.